Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Richard Ziegler and I'm the Mayor of Warrnambool City Council. I'll be chairing tonight's council meeting. I'd like to formally welcome everyone watching, and this council meeting will be live streamed to allow for public viewing and transparency, and if any technical problems interrupt the live stream during the meeting will be adjourned until the issues are rectified. This scheduled meeting will be conducted in accordance with Council's governance rules, and any interruptions to the meeting or actions not in line with behavioural expectations will be dealt with in accordance with these rules. I'll ask the councillors to stand. We commence with the opening prayer. Almighty God, grant to this council wisdom, understanding and sincerity of purpose for the good governance of this city. Amen. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Are there any apologies for this meeting? There being no apologies, we'll move along to the confirmation of minutes. At item 3 on the agenda, we have a recommendation before us to confirm the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 1st of November 2021. Do I have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Jelly. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. If a councillor has a conflict of interest, they must declare it now and do so again just prior to the item being discussed. A councillor who has declared a conflict of interest must leave the meeting and remain outside while the matter is being considered or any vote is taken. Once the matter is resolved, the councillor will return to the meeting. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
I have a conflict of interest for item 7.11, please.
Thank you. No further items of conflict. We move along to the mayoral presentation. It's a big weekend, big week starting on Friday. The mayoral duties involved quite a bit of activity, particularly down around the Friendly Societies area. We had a lot of people there at the Warrnambool Gift. The Mayor attended, I attended, did some presentations of trophies and things. And an even bigger event at the across the road at the showgrounds with the Warrnambool Rodeo. 4,200 people turned up there. People enjoyed themselves. They had a good time, apparently. There were some protesters. They possibly entertained themselves as well. We had very few incidents. There was one man that was injured, as I understand it, an elderly gent who was part of the crew that was entertaining the audience. Then on Sunday there was the celebration at the Art Gallery, which Councillor Jelly and myself attended, and another very interesting presentation was made to recognise the efforts in the community of our good friend Uncle Lockie Eccles, who was recognised for his efforts in the community and for his efforts especially in terms of revitalising local Aboriginal languages. So in terms of Warrnambool, it's a great weekend for tourists, great weekend for the weather, except that Saturday was a little bit on and off. And one could only say that we have a lot of weather in town. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say for the mayoral presentation for this time. I think it was a very special weekend. It shows that the end of COVID is, well, not the end, but a way of living with COVID has shown itself, and we're making the most of it. As I understand it, for item 6, there are no public questions.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the agenda. We're now moving to the officers' report section of the agenda, and I'd like to remind you of the speaking times allocated for each item during the meeting, as outlined in our governance rules. The mover of a motion may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes to open the debate, and then a further 2 minutes later on to exercise their right of reply and to close the debate. Any other councillor, including the seconder, may speak for or against a motion for no more than 3 minutes. To assist councillors with time limits, you will hear a signal when you have reached the maximum time allowed. I would ask you to respect the time limits, please. Item 7, 7.1, CEO Employment Remuneration Policy, agenda page number 6. This comes from the Executive Services Department. And the purpose of this report is to present the amended CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy, the CEO Employment Matters Advisory Committee terms of reference to Council for consideration. Councillors, do I have a recommendation? Are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? Do I have a motion? Councillor Jelly?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move the motion that the council accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly. This has been had to be re-looked at, and as part of the Local Government Act 2020, it's a requirement under Section 45, outlines the role of the CEO Employment Matters Advisory Committee, and I think it's great to re-look at it, and with the proposed changes to the membership structure of the committee, I think it's excellent that all councillors are now involved, and I think that's a great step.
Thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor. Just quickly, yes, it is a very important function of Council, the CMAC committee, in the assessment of the work and delivery of outcomes that Council does for Warrnambool. And it's a very exciting change now in terms of reference. There at least has to be a majority of councillors on the committee now, which is a change, and it looks like, at least for the next 12 months, yes, we will have all 7 councillors on there, which will mean better accountability to council and the CEO. Traditionally, the committee was only the mayor and 2 other councillors. And I look forward to working together with the CEO, as I'm sure the rest of council does, and continuing to build on the work of previous councils. So I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? No. I will say my piece about this. I, again, endorse the comments of both Councillor Jelly and Councillor Blaine, and support the motion to the extent that it means that the full council gets a good look at what's going on with the employment and remuneration policies and employment matters concerning the CEO. So I think that's a good spread of responsibilities to make sure that everybody knows what's going on with those particular topics. There being no further speakers, Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak before closing the debate?
No, thank you.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. Item 7.2, appointments to advisory committees and external bodies. Agenda page 9. This comes from the Director of Executive Strategies. This report considers council representation on the various council advisory committees and external bodies with which council is associated for the 2021 to 2022 council year. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion?
Yes, Mayor, through you. I've got a few questions on this. Just for clarification, so is this document in order to just appoint councillors to the advisory committees?
Sorry, I didn't hear the rest of it.
Is this item just to appoint councillors to advisory committees?
Mayor, that's correct.
That's correct.
That's all it's for. The next question I had then through you, Mayor, was what are the terms of reference for the membership of the South West Victorian Livestock Exchange Committee?
Mayor, I don't have those terms of reference with me at the moment. I'll just see if I can pull that up.
Have they been circulated?
They were circulated to the councillors at the briefing session, Mayor.
So then my next question would be, has there been any change to the terms of reference over this year?
Not that I'm aware. I'll just check with Mr. Utri.
Through you, Mayor. I believe that we're trying to gain alignment in terms of the role of the chair in the committees. I'm not sure. I've got to check in terms of whether we need to put the terms of references up for that change or whether we're able to proceed as we are, because we've had our previous meeting where we appointed the chair on the basis of it being a council representative.
So then, has the South West Victorian Livestock Exchange Reference Committee been presented with any changes to their housing?
No, not at this point. If we change it formally, then we'll need to represent it to the committee and to council. So we were working on the basis in the first instance in terms of what was happening across the rest of the committees and council.
Through you there again. So how do committee members know that what the terms of reference are, and so we don't know if they can be changed, how they are actually changed, whether or not by officers or by council?
Through you. Sorry, just council plays back. I believe you're saying how we would go about changing the terms of reference. Ultimately, we wanted to ensure that the terms of reference were accurate in terms of the way that it was functioning, and we wanted to effect the change. We'd represent it to council for adoption.
Because what it sort of comes down to is how can I be designated for the chair when it quite clearly states in the current terms of reference that it has to be an independent member in this report?
Through Ned, that's fine. We can either put an independent member in the interim for the next meeting, or we can change the terms of reference formally for council, whichever council prefers.
And the last question I have is the way that this is being done then currently, is this in line with the good governance practices for all the advisory committees and reference groups, if that's the way we're going to do it?
Sorry, through you, could you repeat that, Councillor Blake?
Is this practice then in line with the principles of good governance in relation to the advisory committees and the reference groups?
Which principle? Sorry, Councillor.
Not without changing the terms of reference and appointing a councillor as the chair.
Well, as I said, Councillor, it would be by far and away better if Council adopted, if there was a significant change to the terms of reference. More than happy that we represent that to Council to ensure that that's the case, or we can revert to the way the terms of reference are as they've been previously put out.
Sorry, just one more too. Did the committee, did the committee vote or decide on that on this check?
No, through you, Mayor, we actually, I actually put forward that Councillor Blade would be chairing the committee, really just in alignment with the rest of the committees.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, do we have a motion? Yes, Councillor Taylor. Do we have a second of the motion? Councillor Espaliaris.
Excuse me.
Councillor Taylor.
Point of order, Mayor.
Sorry,
Point of order. What is the motion?
what is the motion?
I'd like to move that the motion as per the officers' recommendation of the appointments to the advisory committees and external bodies be accepted.
And you've got a second, you second that motion? Councillor Espaliaris.
Yes, and is that, may I just clarify, I'm seconding that exact.
That recommendation, yes. Thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. These committees play a vital role into a efficient overall advisory, consultative and networking process, and the need for councillors' time and energy to be primarily focused on policy, development, business strategies and monitoring of performances. Thank you, Mayor Segel.
Thank you. Councillor Espaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
My only comments would be that it's good that we have the councillors remaining pretty well in their committees that they were for the last 12 months, and I think that creates some consistency and continuity for our work with committees, which is good. That will serve them well.
Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Arnold?
I would just like to reinforce Councillor Pascalari's and Councillor Taylor's view on the importance of these committees. I think they create a bridge between community and council, and I am also pleased to see that we've got some continuity with those committees. Thank you, Ms. Egbert.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak?
I'd just like to move an amendment in addition to Councillor Taylor's motion. I'd like another point to put there that as per the current terms of reference for the South West Victorian Livestock Exchange, I won't be appointed as chair at this stage until.
So your amendment, the
My
motion
amendment is that I'm appointed as chair of the South West Victorian Livestock Exchange at this point in time as it goes against the terms of reference.
Do we have a second to the amendment?
Who will second it?
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion? The amendment?
Just because, the main reason I'm just moving the amendment here is because at this point in time, in terms of reference, I allow councillor to be the chair of the committee, so I wouldn't go with the terms of reference of the group. That's the main reason. Thank you, Mayor.
Do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Well, I would support that amendment is made.
Do you accept the terms of the amendment, Councillor Taylor?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Segel.
So the amendment becomes the motion. There being no, any other of speakers wish to speak to the amendment becoming the motion? All right. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is carried. Item 7.3, the draft advocacy plan, Director of Corporate Strategies. The purpose of this report is for Council to review and adopt the draft advocacy plan 2021-2025. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? No further questions? Councillors, do I have a motion? What is your motion?
I would like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Pascaliaris? Thank you. Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, thank you. The draft advocacy plan was prepared with community feedback and engagement, and during the process we also had a councillor workshop. It is our responsibility under the Local Government Act that the plan is aligned, and we do advocate on behalf of the community to achieve the best outcomes for the municipal community, including future generations. Over the past decade, Warrnambool City Council has been really successful in advocating for funding for the city centre renewal, which was 10 million, the new library 16.3 million, Reed Oval 7 million, Flagstaff Hill 1.95 million, the Port of Warrnambool boat ramp, jetty flat upgrade, and many other grants for fishing, sports grounds upgrades and accessibility improvements. Our advocacy priorities, which I feel are really exciting and can move Warrnambool forward. We would like to advocate for a new aquatic and fitness centre, a safer Port of Warrnambool, repairing the breakwater and a safer boat launching, a new Warrnambool Surf Lifesaving Club, and that's hopefully to bring it up to the 21st century, a much faster rail, which will help see more growth in jobs, housing, everything like that. We want to look at Flagstaff Hill, the future directions. I think that is really important. A new Warrnambool Art Gallery. We wish to work on a Briley Master Plan, small town sewage upgrades, the Bushfield Woodford Structure Plan, and Raglan Parade pedestrian safety. We'll also take a look at more advocacy for Almsford area as well. We continue to record the fastest growth of towns and cities in the southwest, and these priorities definitely see our city moving in the right direction, and I look forward to future growth and prosperity for our town. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Pascaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
This council group has a heavy focus on advocacy, and I think this document, as far as the document is concerned, it's been modified to reflect the current councillor preference of advocacy projects at the beginning of the document rather than at the end, and I think that was something that was initiated by Councillor Blaine at the time, and I think it's important to ask for what you want at the start and really get that message out there, but also ensure you have the information within the document to summarise and explain what Warrnambool Council, City Council has already advocated for and delivered or will deliver. Obviously, as Councillor Arnott has explained, there are a list of advocacy priorities. Obviously, with a growing population, a lot of these projects or priorities are really important. With an aquatic and fitness centre, we also have a look at maybe more of a community hub type approach to the city, where we've got Woodford Allinsford, as previously mentioned, and engaged with Anne Briley. So I think that this gives a really nice overview of what we're looking at in terms of gaining funding and advocating for. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Jelly.
Thank you, Ms Ziegler. Yes, this is an exciting list of things and document to get out to the community to show them what we've been talking about in the last 12 months. As a new council, we've worked through a lot of things and learned a lot, so it's great we had a great workshop to bring this list together, and it's a live document. It will move and change. Some of these things will take quite a few years to prepare for and plan for, look for funding, but there's a lot of things out there, and this list came from community feedback and talking to the community, what's important to us all, what are the aspirations of the city long term and short term. There's some various time frames in there. So I think it's a great list to get out there, and look forward to working with councillors and all the staff at council offices to bring some of these to fruition.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Blunt.
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. I think it is very important council advocates strongly for the current and future needs of Warrnambool. The future of Aquazone is something that's close to my heart, and with our growing city and ageing facility, we really need to begin planning for the future. We're only at the start of this planning phase with this new facility, so as council understands what Warrnambool needs with a new pool, you can actually get a business case together in order to advocate strongly for Warrnambool. Also, the structure plans and future investment needs for Woodford and Bushfield, and delivering on the Allinsford Master Plan, I think are very important. But I think one of the most exciting projects council can achieve in the near future is the Briley Reserve Community Hub. The northeast of Warrnambool has seen some of the largest and most sustained growth of any of the areas in Warrnambool. I believe there's a desperate need for more community infrastructure in this area. Briley Reserve was purchased by council in 1999. The master plan was first completed in 2012, and I think that this project is more important now than ever. With an update of the plan and a business case, Briley Reserve Community Hub will be shovel ready, which is something that we really want to see with our projects as we're advocating. In my view, the hub would be critical in creating 20-minute neighbourhoods where services would be available to anyone in Warrnambool within 20 minutes of where they live. And the services at these hubs can be tailored to meet the needs of the community. It doesn't matter if it's a kindergarten, elderly day services, immunisations, meeting rooms for community groups, offices for social services like domestic violence, access to our new library service or night classes. The opportunities could be endless, and we can tailor the space for exactly what the community needs. It's different to just being a sporting facility. It would cater to not only the clubs at Briley, but the wider neighbourhood and the wider community. With the pandemic, we've seen how important decentralisation is, and increasing access to critical services and bringing it closer to home is going to be incredibly important moving forward. I see that if we actually could get Briley, it would be the start of community hubs all around Warrnambool to move towards a true 20-minute city. I see when Briley is working, it would be not only north, but we could also have hubs in the south, east and west, each hub offering a different suite of products and services in order to cater for the needs of the community neighbourhoods. I feel this would improve outcomes across a range of health, fitness and wellbeing measures across Warrnambool if it's done well, and I'm excited for the future of all the projects that are in this plan, but the Briley Reserve in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Has any other councillor got anything to say? Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
I'm very pleased that this council has these 10 priorities to advocate for over the next 3 years, and in particular it would be great to see the Olympic pool, the 50-metre pool have attention. It hasn't been had any money spent on it for 60 years, whether it has money on it to refurbish it, or whether the Aquazone needs to be recited, either one, but something has to be done as soon as possible to the 50-metre Olympic pool, and also the Port of Warrnambool, the breakwater badly needs attention, and as soon as that happens, the better for the Warrnambool and the tourist season, and the safer boat launching will be happening next year. So it's great to see the council advocating for these priorities. Thank you, Mayor Segal.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Anyone, any of the other councillors? Yes, thanks, Councillor Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. It is really exciting to see all these priorities that council is going to advocate. The only thing I'm seeing is missing is the sport facilities that, as Warrnambool is a growing city, we need all-in-one sport facilities, such that we be able to advocate with all these standpoints that we have.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold, there being no further speakers, I take it? You wish to speak before this?
I will, thank you. I would just like to make it clear that we are advocating for all of Warrnambool. I see all these projects as being important. They're important to different groups of people in our community for different reasons. I would like to be able to deliver all of these projects, but maybe that's not possible in our term. But hopefully, as a council, we can get all these projects well on the way, well, with the planning completed. But I do see, you know, every one of us probably has some different interests and some different things that they would like to push. But my way of looking at these things is that they are important to all of the community and different sections of the community. So it shouldn't be a bias towards one particular project. Thank you, Ms. Edward.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. 7.4, Complaints Policy. The purpose of this report is to provide council with the complaints policy for their consideration and proposed adoption. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? Being no questions. Councillors, do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Blaine. What is your motion?
The council adopt the complaints policy as at attachment 1.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hone, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. Just quickly, I believe this is the first time Warrnambool City Council has actually had a standalone complaints policy, which is a requirement under the new Local Government Act 2020. Our complaints used to be handled under the Customer Service Charter, but I think it's important that we do have a standalone policy because I think it's important for transparency on how council actually defines and handles complaints. The Victorian Ombudsman in 2015 and again in 2019 looked at how councils handled complaints, and it was concerning because a lot of councils didn't have a lot of complaints. They were labelling them as customer service requests. So it's really positive to see that this has been prepared with using the complaints handling guidelines from the Ombudsman's office, and I'm actually very pleased to see the complaints policy actually clearly defines what the difference between a service request and a complaint is. This is an important policy, and I think it's an important policy in holding the operations of council to account by the public, so I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Vespaliaris?
Thank you, Mayor. council and to be open, transparent, and always trying to listen. So this sort of document encourages the community to let us know when they aren't happy about something. And I think what it does is it outlines a clearly defined set of steps to guide complaints and the response. Within the policy, it shows how to make a complaint, all the different types of communications that one can choose from, and how a complaint will be handled. So it has a 4-tiered approach, which is a series of steps in itself. So I would be happy to support this type of document. Thank you.
There being no other councillors who wish to speak to the motion, I'll take the opportunity to make a few points and endorse what Councillor Paspagliaris has said, in that it's very important that our customers know how they can register complaints, what they can expect during the complaints process, how they understand their complaints will be handled, to ensure that feedback is handled in a fair and unbiased and consistent way, allowing for corrective actions to be taken, and to consider and respect human rights. These are very important aspects of complaints policy, and they're not to be mitigated by any circumstances. A very important mechanism whereby our customers are able to be heard when they have complaints. There have been no further comment from other councillors. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Following strategy. 7.5, agenda page 16. Director of Corporate Strategies. The purpose of this report is to consider the updated borrowing strategy. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Arnold?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Saber. The borrowing strategy is a requirement of the Local Government Act 2020, and it is there to ensure that council, we have actually a sound financial framework and to support our borrowings and manage our loan portfolio. As I said, this is very important to make sure that as a council we remain sustainable, that we have clear guidelines of how we borrow money, our investments, and we adhere to the provisions of the Local Government Act 2020. So I'm happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Seeger. I'd just like to endorse all of Councillor Arnott's remarks. Thank you, Mayor Seeger.
Thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Blaine.
Thank you, Mayor Seeger. The strategy is, the borrowing strategy is very important, as both Councillor Arnott and Councillor Taylor have made clear. The strategy very clearly outlines that borrowing cannot be used for operational purposes, and borrowings must be no greater than 50% of the rate revenue. That's where we aim to keep our borrowings at. The new policy does open up some new opportunities for council. Under the new policy, council can go to the Treasury Corporation of Victoria for funds at low interest rates, which is positive for us moving forward, especially with all these projects on the go. I also think it's important for this policy that even though borrowings are a risk to council, it doesn't limit the ability for council to be able to borrow in order to take on opportunities that may present themselves. In a managed and prudent way, borrowing for a new venture or to support a service that will have positive outcomes for the wider community of Warrnambool, I think is one of the most important functions that council does, and I don't want it to be limited by the way in which we can borrow funds. But I do think it's important that the debt limits that are in this policy stay where they are, so that we can handle these risks and have the borrowing capacity available in order to take on these opportunities without raising the debt limits. So I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rana.
No, thank you. I think everything's been said. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further discussion on this, I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. 7.6, we have the investment policy. The purpose of this report is to consider the updated investment policy. Councillors, are there any questions on this before I seek a motion? Being no further questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Blaine. What is your motion?
The council adopt the investment policy as contained in attachment 1.
Thank you. Is there a second to this motion? Councillor Rana. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ziegler. This is another update to a council policy to make it compliant with the Local Government Act 2020. Council investments have traditionally been very low risk, and this policy supports this, making sure no more than 40% of all investments are with one financial institution and that funds are in low risk portfolios. Being public funds, I think it's important that the funds are invested smartly and in low risk environments. It's it's not our personal money, so we need to be responsible for everyone's dollars that are in there. It is tough at the moment with interest rates so low, and council does have a good amount of money in the bank. It's just not receiving a great return on it. So I'm happy to support this, and hopefully things turn around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Rana?
I'll just add, yes, it is a bit of a double-edged sword at the moment, isn't it? For low interest rates, we can borrow money, but for any money we have in the bank, we're not earning very much. So, but this update to the policy, this is there to protect community money and to give us the guidelines. So I'm happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Are there any councillors who also wish to speak to the motion? No. There being no further speakers, Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak before closing the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 7.7, the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report of Activities, agenda page 20. Purpose of this report is to present the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Blaine, what is your motion?
The council notes the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report, which details the activities of the committee covering the meetings held on the 13th of August and the 16th of November 2021.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. I'd just like to extend a thank you to the long service of both Rob Wallace and Dennis for their time that they've spent on the audit over the years. And it's also been a privilege to work with Aswan Kumar this year, and I look forward to working with him and our new members Donna and Leon as we move into the new year. Some of the changes that have actually been instigated by the Audit and Risk Committee was a self-assessment tool in order for council to provide feedback for auditors. I think everyone's actually found use out of that in providing meaningful feedback about how audits were conducted and how and the way the organisation felt about the way they were conducted. I think that's been a really positive relationship, building a really positive relationship between auditors and the organisation. And I'd also like to thank our auditors, McLaren Hunt, in particular Nigel Cole, for his service over the last 3 years. We'll move to a new VARGO auditor, RSD, who's just been appointed, and I look forward to working with them in the new year. I believe the audit and risks functioned at a high level with councillors, officers and staff, and I hope that, well, I'm sure this will continue into the new year. Thank you.
Is that second, Councillor Paspaliaris? Would you, do you care to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll just add to Councillor Blaine's comments. Being on the Audit and Risk Committee myself, I have observed it over the last 12 months or so as being a really well-functioning committee. It's the type of committee that I think the council officers have proved that they work really well with the auditors. They have a good working relationship with internal and external auditors. So I would really like to see that continue. I would also like to thank Rob Wallace and Dennis Farley for their service as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wish to make comment or speak to the motion? No. I will make some comments to the motion to the effect that the efforts of Councillor Dennis Farley and Mr. Dennis Farley and Professor Rob Wallace deserve acknowledgement for their hard work over the years that they've contributed to the Audit and Risk Committee. It's a very important committee for probity and to make sure that our funds and investments and all the rest of it are watched over carefully. And the committee has done an exceptionally good job, worked very, very well with our council officers, who are to be commended as well for their efforts. Is there any further discussion to be held on that? If there's none, Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, Mayor Ziegler, it's not only just the finances, it's also the practices and all the policies within council to make sure that we are doing best governance in everything that we do, and we're at the cutting edge of the way that we do business. So, yes, no, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Blaine. There being no further speakers, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Warrnambool Planning Scheme Amendment C209 WARR Deakin University, agenda page 22. This report recommends that Council receive and consider the submission made to Amendment C209 WARR to the Warrnambool Planning Scheme, to adopt the amendment in accordance with officer recommendations, and submit the adopted amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval. Councillor, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Blaine. What is your motion?
I move that we accept the officer's recommendations.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Arnott. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. Just quickly, this is I think the final step for us in going to the Minister. We only received one submission going out to public, which was from the EPA, asking if there was any contaminated ground. After looking at the historical use of the land, it appears that council hasn't seen any potential contamination. Really, this is just tidying up to going from a farming zone to a public use zone to match in with the rest of Deakin University. And hopefully with this planning change, the exciting opportunity for Deakin to progress the hydrocell energy project will continue. And hopefully this year will continue to make, and this planning amendment will make the planning overlays consistent over the entire Deakin education precinct. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? There being no further speakers, Councillor Lane, do you wish to speak before closing the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Item 7.9, 250 Hopkins Point Road, agenda page 27. This report presents the planning application for the use of the land, the host farm.
Excuse me, Mayor, we might just pause for a minute. Just having a couple of problems with the live stream that I'm confident I can rectify.
Resume the meeting. This report presents the planning application for the use of the land for host farm and development of land for a replacement dwelling at 250 Hopkins Point Road, Warrnambool. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? Being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that the motion as per officer's recommendation be accepted.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Akosh. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. Yes, I find it hard to comprehend the oversize of the building, and it's a eyesore to be situated on the sand dune, but I see it far enough away from Hopkins Point Road not to be discriminating from the road. So as far as I see it, I'd endorse the recommendation. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Are there any other councillors? Sorry, Councillor Koch, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ziegler. I do think the plan sit well with all is written here, and I think there is no legal ground to stop the development of that area. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Arnott.
I found this application a very difficult one to deal with, to be honest. The application is for a contemporary dwelling nestled into the sand dune. The dimensions of the building are astronomical. They're 741 square metres and 57 metres wide. It's a very large building, personally one that I don't find all that attractive. But, however, it is comparable to other buildings in the area, including a neighbouring property which will have a footprint of 563 square metres and its longest dimension of 49.4 metres, so it is quite comparable. I do make note that the dwelling has been moved a further 14 metres away from the sand dunes, which is a good thing. There's been 5 objections to the building, and the objections have all been relevant. I do feel, though, that the applicant has addressed any potential risk associated with climate change, bushfires, soil degradation and land capability. So that's just my thoughts at the moment. Mayor Ziegler, thank you.
Do we have any further comments? Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Further comments from the councillors with regard to this? Councillor Taylor, I will make the comment before I move to Councillor Taylor.
Can I, sorry, point of order.
Sorry.
May I speak after you?
Oh, yes, certainly, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, first? Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I think with this development, it is very large, a dwelling. I do also note that an adjacent neighbour has a dwelling approved, but it does have a smaller footprint compared with this one. I would support a smaller footprint, and I would support a shorter dwelling. This seems to be quite high in terms of 3 metres above June level, I think it was. I'm not sure what kind of greenery and planting there'll be on the rooftop of this building, and how that will stand up to the harsh conditions in the area. I think it's really, really big, and I do tend to think that it is a little over the top in terms of visual amenity for the area. I've also struggled with this application as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blaine.
After reading the report, I do find that I disagree with the assertion the land still being classed as having a single dwelling. With this property being built, the original farmhouse, that's 2 dwellings, especially when the original farmhouse is proposed to be used as a 10-bedroom Airbnb. The other part of this application that doesn't really sit well with me is the educational farm. On such a small parcel of land with a proposed few paddocks and 2 dwellings, I feel this doesn't really fit with the agricultural overlay. I believe the planning controls for subdivision on agricultural land across many municipalities sit around a 50 acre minimum. So to have 2 dwellings on this small parcel of land, it doesn't sit well with me, and I'm not sure if I can support it at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. My own comments refer to the aesthetics, which I believe leave a bit to be desired. That's a personal taste. The size of the dwelling proposed is enormous. Again, I have misgivings about that from a personal point of view. I acknowledge Councillor Blaine's comments in terms of the size of farming aspects. I have serious misgivings about the purpose in terms of educational farming practices. But I don't see any real value in opposing the legal aspects. It's completely legal. Doesn't sit right with me, but it's completely legal. I don't see how I can oppose it. Apart from that, Councillor Taylor, sorry, does anyone else have anything to say about this? Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak before closing the debate?
No, thank you, Ms Ziegler.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? 4-3. The motion has been carried. Item 7.10, Warrnambool Residential Land Supply Audit Report. This report provides an update on residential land supply within the Warrnambool local government area for 2021. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, I'll seek the motion. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Arnott?
Just like
what is
to
your motion?
move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris. Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. This is a very important exercise that we do keep an eye on with our land supply. Warrnambool is growing at a really fast rate, as evidenced by a lot of the building and new areas opening up. We have to take note that our growth areas are north of the Marai and the Dennington. They're both our largest housing supply. If we look at our land supply to 2031, we'll have an increase in population of approximately 8,000 people. So we'll need about 245 dwellings each year. At the moment, we have enough residential lots for 5,550 residential lots, which is equivalent to about 20.4 years land in supply. It is slightly down on previous audits. So as I said before, we do need to keep an eye on that, but I'm happy to endorse the report. Thank you, Ms. Ziegler.
Councillor Paspagliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, the report or the audit is important on an annual basis because of, that measure each year and comparison, but also because Warrnambool is growing rapidly. I think that it would be important and is important for council to, I guess, maintain open communication and dialogue with developers about this type of audit and what it means on the ground, so to speak. I think that possibly there can be some additional, layers incorporated into such an audit, or possibly a complementary type audit in future as well, just outlining some of those additional aspects. But as far as this report's concerned, I'm happy to support it and endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Blaine.
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. According to the report, at this point in time, land supply doesn't put immediate pressure on council to rezone more land, and it is important, as Councillor Arnott and Councillor Paspagliaris have said, that we monitor the situation closely. But there is pressure on developers to be developing land in order to have housing blocks available in the city. With nearly a doubling of new dwellings in the last year, the high demand for properties in Warrnambool, I believe, we will continue to see land developed and at an accelerated rate over the coming years, which very well in the next 3 to 4 years could put pressure on our residential land supply. We're only at the start of this accelerated development in demand, and it'll be interesting to see if this will be sustained over the next 10 years or longer, or if it's only going to be a short burst. Warrnambool is an open and welcoming city, and but the building supply and labour issues that we are experiencing are also being experienced around the state, and this is probably one of the biggest factors that's actually slowing development in Warrnambool. I do hope that we can overcome these hurdles and we can continue to grow as a city as we move forward. So, yes, I'm happy to support the report.
Any other comments from other councillors? Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the...
No, thank you.
All right. There being no further speakers, I will now put the motion to the vote. Sorry?
No,
All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. Item 7.11, this is where you declare an interest. This report provides information on award of contract 2021-051, supply and installation of solar panels. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? No further questions. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine? What is your motion?
I move that council award contract 2021-051, supply and installation of solar panels to Gippsland Solar Proprietary Limited, RACV Solar, for the tendered lump sum amount of $378,235.10, excluding GST, and that the schedule of rates offered is accepted for the life of the contract, and authorise the CEO to sign, seal and vary the contract as required.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Barnett. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. It's exciting when council's looking and taking action on items that will preserve our environment. This installation of panels is more than just about dollars and cents. This is about protecting our environment and the future of our beautiful city. Some of our biggest energy-using facilities, like Aquazone, the Archie Graham and the Civic Centre, will be getting these panels, not only to reduce our power bills, but to protect our environment. This feeds directly into the 2040 plan by being another step towards council moving the city towards being carbon neutral by 2040. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, well, as Councillor Blaine has stated, this is more than just about saving dollars. It's also about addressing climate change, and it does work hand in hand with our 2040 plan. Just like to make note that our investment, we should have a return on investment after around 7 years. So that's really good, and I'm happy to support this tender. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak to the motion? There being no further speakers, Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak before closing the vote? All those in, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Item 7.12. We'll just wait until Councillor Paspaliaris comes back in. Paspaliaris. 7.12, Warrnambool Library fees and charges. This report provides background information and makes a recommendation to include additional fees and charges in Council's fees and charges schedule specifically for library operations. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, I'll seek a motion. Councillors, do I have one? Thank you. Councillor Blaine. What is your motion?
I move we accept the officer's recommendations.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Paspaliaris. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. I'm happy to support the fee schedule, the new fee schedule for the library fees. One of the biggest positive steps I actually see is with the new library, it won't charge late fees to the library. It's been found that this discourages use of local libraries, and I think it's something that's really important to get public participation and to get as much utilisation as we can for our new library. As a council, once a new library is built, we're going to have this amazing resource available, and I think it's important that council encourages the utilisation of the facility. And because we've exited the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation, anyone who actually has any outstanding fines from the previous library Well, they've all, we're starting afresh. We're going to welcome everyone back on level playing ground. All those fees will be gone. So this is really positive, so I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. My only additional comments would be that I did like the idea of the overdue system was not to be a barrier to future library engagement, so that there are better practices that can be implemented to have the overdue books returned. So I agree with Councillor Blaine on that one.
Thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak to the motion? I'll make the comments that I'm relatively pleased with the fees and charges as noted, and very pleased that there's been a way around the recovery of books and the fines system. I just wonder whether we'll get a huge rush of books returned back to the library. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to close the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
I'll put the motion. There being no further speakers, all those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Item 7.13, the Stadium. Update to fees and charges schedule. Agenda page 41. This report recommends and seeks Council's endorsement to a change to Council's fees and charges that relate to the Warrnambool Stadium. It is proposed that the new fees be implemented from January 2022. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Rana, what is your motion?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Blaine. Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I will, thank you, Mayor Ziegler. This is changing the structure of the fees to a licence model, and Council have considered that this, and with the associations, this is a much fairer way and makes sport a lot more affordable to many more people, which is Council's role to encourage fitness and health. Initially, Council will have a slight monetary impact, but we still feel that this is a much better way for not only the Basketball Association, we've got netball, badminton, the bias bowls and the Volleyball Association all taking part out there at the stadium. So at this stage, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor Ziegler. This, as Councillor Arnott said, this will result in lower fees for the clubs, and it should result actually in more equity amongst all the sports out there at the stadium. Without doing the rebate model, especially for the basketballers, it'll be less admin costs for council. And hopefully this change in fees will have a really positive impact on the viability of the clubs. And by having a per hour court charge, it encourages greater use of the stadium facility across the municipality. So I think this encourages activation. And even with the small cost to council, I don't think that's I don't think that should be holding us back from trying to encourage more and more to use our stadium. So I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Are there any councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. The current fee model of collection of individual user fees and paying a rebate back to the clubs is administratively inefficient and does not support the clubs to be sustainable and independent. So I'll support this recommendation, and it'll be far more implementable for the clubs. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Are there any other councillors wish to make comment on this particular motion? I would like to make the comment that I'm all for any simplification of the bookkeeping and for an encouragement of the use of the stadium so that it becomes much more affordable for all users. I'm all for that. So, Councillor Arnott, you wish to close the debate?
No, I think everything's been covered. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Thank you. There being no further speakers, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Item 7.14, Winter Sports Ground Tenants Refund Request. This report recommends that Council supports a partial refund to the winter tenancy fee charged to sports ground user groups for access and use of facilities for training and competition during 2021. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that the motion is as per the officer's recommendation be accepted. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Blaine. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. Yes, COVID has placed a huge financial burden on many businesses and organisations, and sporting ground tenants fit right into this category, as many sporting organisations have had little income at all when the calendar events have had to be cancelled for the year because of COVID. And I endorse the recommendation of 1/3 of the winter tenancy to be refunded for the 21 season. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor. $21,425. It isn't a king's ransom, and I think it's really important that we do give back to the clubs who weren't able to play for a third of the season due to these lockdowns, especially with many of these clubs actually going through their second disrupted season. I think it's fair for council to offer a refund of part of the fees. And I really hope, and I'm sure that the clubs will do it, they'll use these funds that are going back in their pockets to build for a bigger and better season in 2022. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Jelly.
Yes, I think this is a great outcome and something really good that we're able to do. As Councillor Blaine said, it's not a king's ransom, 21,000, but it will assist those teams and those groups. As we know, they're usually all volunteers, and they've had no opportunity to have raffles and barbecues and dinners and things like that like they would over the time. Because the circumstances have been out of their control, so I think it's great to be able to support them. They've had a tough couple of years like everyone else, but look forward to next year and hope that we don't have to give a refund next year and that they play and are able to enjoy. So I endorse this very much.
Thanks, Councillor Jelly. Are any other councillors wish to make comment, speak to the motion? I'll add my comment to the effect that I think this is a concrete contribution back to the clubs which have had a particularly tough year, and I think it's the least we can do to promote their activities for 2022. There being no further speakers, Councillor Taylor, do you wish to close the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Item 7.15, Advisory Committee Reports. Agenda page 48. This report contains the record of 4 Advisory Committee meetings. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? Councillor Blaine.
My question would be, on the South West Victorian Livestock Exchange Advisory Committee, how do the minutes fall for that now that we've sort of worked out that the chair can't be a councillor, and it's recorded like that in the minutes.
Through you, Mr Mayor. For the purposes of the minutes, Councillor Blaine still will have acted, and we're able to resolve the terms of reference prior to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any further questions before I seek a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine, what is your motion?
Oh, sorry. I move that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Arnott? Thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this particular motion? There being no further speakers, Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak before closing the debate?
No, thank you.
No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Item 7.16. The informal meetings of council reports, agenda page 49. The purpose of this report is to provide council with copies of informal meetings of council, previously known as Assembly of Council records, as previously required under section 80A, part 2 of the Local Government Act 1989. Council, is there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Arnott?
I'd just like to move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Paspaliaris? Councillor Arnott, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Councillor Paspaliaris? Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? There being no further speakers, Councillor, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Item 7.17, Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council Activities Summary Report. This report summarises the Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council activities since the last ordinary meeting, which particularly relate to key social, economic and environmental issues of direct relevance to the Warrnambool community. Councillors, are there any questions on this item before I seek a motion? There being no questions, Councillor, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Mayor Ziegler. I'd like to move that the motion of the Mayoral and Chief Executive Council Activities Summary Report be accepted. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Blaine, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Ziegler.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this particular motion? No. There being no further speakers, I'll put the motion to the vote. Unless you want to speak? No?
No.
Okay. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. There are no notices of motion coming here. Item 8 on the agenda. Item number 9, general business. I will make the point that only items of a minor or routine nature can be raised in general business. The Chair may reject any item that is not of a minor or routine nature or that meets any of the reasons listed in Clause 29, Part 2 of the Governance Rules. Councillors may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes, and council officers will be provided an opportunity to respond or address issues raised. General business is for items that are of a minor or routine nature, as I said, and I retain the right to reject the items in accordance with that clause of the Governance Rules. Councillors, are there any items of general business? There are no items of general business. I'll move on to item 10 on the agenda, the urgent business. Chief Executive Officer, have you received notice of any items of urgent business?
None received, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 11, the closed section of the meeting. There are confidential meetings for consideration tonight. Can I have a councillor move a motion to close the meeting to the public at 7:11 p.m? Councillor Blaine. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Paspaliaris. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried.